The sun dipped low in the western sky, casting a warm, golden hue over the town of Maycomb as Scout Finch stepped off the train. Her heart swelled with a mixture of anticipation and trepidation as she took in the familiar landscape. The sagging porches, the lazy, meandering river, the old oak tree that stood sentinel over the Finch home. The place where her youth had been forged, where the crucible of growing up had molded her character, and where, if truth be told, she still felt an undeniable sense of belonging. As Scout walked towards her childhood abode, her footsteps echoing on the cobblestone path, she took in the changes that time had wrought upon Maycomb. The once pristine white clapboard houses were now marred by faded paint and peeling wallpaper. The lush green lawns had turned a dusty brown under the weight of too many summers. Yet, despite these outward signs of decay, there was an undeniable resilience in the air. The town was weathering the storms of war and the simmering racial tensions that threatened to boil over. Upon reaching the Finch house, Scout found it much as she had left it, save for a new addition, a wheelchair ramp that snaked up the front steps like a serpent coiled around an ancient oak. The sight of it brought a lump to her throat and tears pricked at her eyes, reminding her painfully of Jem's slow decline and the loss she had yet to come to terms with. Stepping inside, Scout found herself greeted by the scent of beeswax polish and the comforting embrace of home. She made her way through the parlor, where Atticus sat, his eyes clouded by the weight of years, and down the hallway to her old room. The sight of her childhood bed, with its faded floral coverlet, brought a wistful smile to her lips as she ran her fingers over the worn fabric. That evening, Scout ventured out into the town, seeking out the old friends who had shaped her youth and remained an integral part of her identity. Her first stop was the Radley house, where she found Boo Radley's empty chair sitting by the window, the sunlight streaming through the dusty panes, casting eerie shadows upon the floor. The memory of their unlikely friendship still brought a lump to Scout's throat, and she stood for a moment, lost in thought, before continuing on her way. Next, she visited Calpurnia at her modest home, where the aroma of fried chicken and collard greens wafted through the open window. The sight of her beloved cook brought a smile to Scout's face, but it was the conversation that followed which truly touched her heart. Calpurnia, ever the sage advisor, spoke frankly about the changes in Maycomb, the racial tensions that were now impossible to ignore, and the feeling of unease that hung heavy in the air. As the sun began to set, casting the world in a fiery red glow, Scout found herself walking along the riverbank, where she had spent countless hours as a child, lost in her own world. The sight of the water, now stained with rust from the iron bridge, brought a pang of sadness to her heart, reminding her of the passage of time and the changes it had wrought upon Maycomb. As Scout stood there, watching the river flow steadily onward, she found herself reflecting on her own personal growth. The lessons she had learned in her youth, the battles she had fought and the sacrifices she had made, seemed both distant and yet imminently relevant. She wondered if she had truly made a difference in Maycomb, if her actions had been more than just fleeting ripples upon the surface of a larger, more entrenched problem. And then, as though on cue, Scout stumbled upon a scene that would answer that question for her. A black family, their clothes tattered and faces lined with years of hardship, stood at the edge of the river, watching as their meager belongings were swept away by the current. The sight of their despairing faces, the silent pleas etched into their worn features, brought a surge of anger to Scout's heart. This was the price of her complacency, the cost of her belief that things would somehow right themselves. With newfound determination, Scout stepped forward, offering what help she could, and in doing so, found herself once again embraced by the spirit of Maycomb. The town, it seemed, still needed its Scout Finch, still required a champion to stand against injustice and fight for what was right. And as she walked back towards her childhood home, her heart swelled with pride and purpose, knowing that she had found her place once more. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world in twilight, Scout returned to the Finch house, ready to take on the challenges that lay ahead. The town of Maycomb may have changed since she had left it, but its spirit remained unbroken, and its people still looked to her as a beacon of hope in a time of darkness. And so, as she stood at the threshold of her old room, Scout Finch steeled herself for the battles yet to come, knowing that she was once again ready to answer Maycomb's call.